All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Look, if you work anywhere near global financial operations, you know that exact feeling, right? A new corporate action hits your terminal and boom, it's just this absolute wall of dates, ratios, and dense legalese. It honestly looks like a foreign language sometimes. But today, we're going to transform that messy wall of financial jargon into a completely predictable, navigable blueprint. We're breaking down the technical nitty-gritty so you can decode these announcements in a matter of seconds.
I mean, be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever stared at one of those notifications and just felt that knot in your stomach, just worrying you might accidentally make a multi-million-dollar mistake? It's a completely valid anxiety to have. In our industry, we all know that misinterpreting just one single line, literally one date or one ratio, can lead to failed settlements and massive financial and reputational hits. It really is the difference between being in total control of your positions and just being completely overwhelmed by the data.
And that brings us to a quote from our source material that I absolutely love because it sets the stakes so perfectly. It says, "This document is the master blueprint for a position's future." Because, to the untrained eye, a corporate action is just a boring block of text. But to those of us actually managing these records, it's not just some passing notification. It is the absolute starting point of the entire life cycle for that security. You get it right here, and everything flows smoothly. You get it wrong, you're going to be fighting fires for weeks.
So here's our agenda for today. First, we'll look at the master blueprint. 2, identifying the underlying security. 3, navigating key event dates. 4, surviving the ratio trap. And finally, number 5, the ultimate defensive line. Starting off with section 1, the master blueprint. To really master this stuff, we need to lower the barrier to entry a bit and just strip away all that intimidating terminology. So think of a corporate action announcement exactly like a wedding invitation. Seriously, a wedding invite tells you exactly who is getting married, when the big day is, when you need to RSVP, and what the reception, or, the gift is going to be. Well, a corporate auction does the exact same thing. It gives you the who, which is the underlying security, the when, which are your event dates, the RSVP, which is the issuer deadline, and the gift, which is the financial benefit, like a dividend or new shares. And just like a wedding, if you ignore that RSVP date or show up on the completely wrong day, you miss out on the benefit entirely. It really is that simple at its core.
Moving on to section 2, identifying the underlying security.
So before we even start worrying about gates or math, we absolutely have to figure out the who of our wedding invitation analogy. A major corporate issuer might have dozens of different securities active in the market at any given time. Different classes of common stock, preferred shares, various bonds, you name it. If you're just looking at the company name, you're flying blind. So the absolute crucial point here is that we must always, actually always, rely on unique identifiers. The ISIN or the ticker are your single source of truth. Doing this identification check ensures we don't accidentally apply a dividend to the wrong class of shares, which, as we know, is a classic and very painful operational error. So verify that ISIN first, every single time.
Let's head into section 3, navigating key event dates.
All right, now that we know exactly who we're dealing with, we need to figure out when everything is happening. Basically, we're defining the rules of the race. The very first major milestone you'll hit is the record date. Sometimes you'll hear it called the book's close date. Think of this date like a camera flash. It's the exact moment the issuer takes a definitive snapshot of their shareholder register just to see who legally owns the shares. If your name is on that ledger when the snapshot goes off, boom, you are officially entitled to the benefit. But getting your name on that ledger in time involves another incredibly critical date. And that brings us to the X date. If you work in operations, you already know that teams completely obsess over the X date. This is your absolute trade cutoff. So if you buy the stock before the X date, great, you're in the race. Your trade will settle in time to be on the register for that record date snapshot. But if you buy the stock on or after the X date, you're buying it X, which literally translates to without the benefit. You'll get the shares, sure, but you definitely won't be getting that upcoming dividend or rights issue. Let's put this into a chronological sequence so we can really visualize it. First up, you have your X date. That's your trade cutoff. You absolutely must act before this to get in the race. Second comes your record date, which is where the issuer takes that ownership snapshot. And finally, if this happens to be a voluntary event, meaning you actually have a choice to make, like in a rights issue, you're going to have an issuer deadline. That is your strict, no exceptions RSVP date to tell the company which option you've chosen. Visualizing this sequence is exactly how you keep yourself out of trouble. You've always got to know exactly where you stand on this timeline. All right, section 4, surviving the ratio trap. Now we're getting into the real heart of the announcement. This is the what or the gift, the actual ratios and rates that tell you exactly what you're getting. But listen to me. You have to be incredibly careful here. Take a look at this ratio, 3 for 2. It looks super simple, right? Just a basic math equation. But these exact numbers hide a massive trap that catches junior analysts off guard literally all the time. Why? Because the meaning of those numbers changes completely depending on where the company is actually based. And here is that shocking ratio trap. In European and Asia-Pacific markets, a 3 for 2 ratio typically means you receive 3 additional shares for every 2 you currently own. So if you hold 2 shares, you get 3 more, giving you a total of 5. Easy enough. But under US market math, that exact same 3 for 2 ratio often means your total holding becomes 3 shares for every 2 you owned. So you end up with just 3 total. It is the exact same numbers, but completely different market conventions, resulting in wildly different payouts. I mean, if you apply US math to a European corporate action, your ledger is going to be drastically short.
So what actually happens behind the scenes when that math doesn't perfectly align? Let's say your ratio calculates out and you're supposed to receive 2.5 shares. Well, you can't usually hold a half share in a traditional setup, so the announcement will explicitly state the treatment of fractions. Issuers usually do one of two things here. They'll either just round down, meaning you just lose that fractional value entirely, or, much more commonly, they'll pay out the value of that fraction as cash in lieu. So you'd get 2 whole shares plus the cash equivalent deposited for that remaining 0.5. You absolutely have to factor this into your cash projections.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate defensive line.
Okay, so we know how to read the blueprint, and we know the who, when, and what. But how do professional operations teams actually defend against bad data out there in the wild? Well, they use a process called event terms cleaning. And let me tell you, this is where you really have to act like a detective. Step 1, never, ever trust the first notice you see. Data errors happen all the time. Step 2, you must compare that data across multiple reliable sources. Pull the announcement from Bloomberg, check it against Reuters, and then cross-reference it with what your global custodians are reporting. You're hunting for a perfectly clean set of terms. And step 3, if there is any mismatch, like say Bloomberg shows a record date of the 14th, but your custodian is saying it's the 15th, that is a massive red flag. You do not guess here. You immediately investigate that mismatch, because literally a single day's difference can cost your firm millions of dollars in failed trades. Mastering how to read these announcements isn't just some boring exercise in reading legal text. As our source material points out, it's really about visualizing the cash and the securities physically moving through the pipes of the global market. You have the blueprint now. You know exactly how to identify the security, how to sequence those critical dates, how to navigate that sneaky ratio trap, and how to cleanse your data. So the final question I'll leave you with is this. Are you going to let the data overwhelm you as a passive observer, or are you ready to use this blueprint to take total control of your desk?